Hello, everyone. My name is Mehul Desai. I'm a senior consultant here at Corporate Results Incorporated. And today I am going to be doing a approximately 1 hour webinar, maybe a little less, on Cognos Report Studio. This just for anyone that's new to this, it's a webinar that's not interactive. So I will not be able to hear anything you ask or say. So this is just a kind of a one-way thing, just to get an informative webinar for you. It's PowerPoint only, so I'm not going to be doing anything active within Cognos. It's just slides, screenshots that we have taken and put together. And as far as the audience, mostly geared towards beginners, maybe some information in for intermediate users, but obviously if you've been using this for some time, it may not hold value. So just wanting you to know that. At the end of this, I will have my contact information. So if you would need our assistance in creating reports or have any questions or see other things that CRI offers, towards the end of the last slide, you will see my contact information. So that being said, just going over to the next slide here. This is going to be our agenda. Pretty much, I'm just going to go over user-specific tricks that end users can do, just pretty much setting up preferences, report writing tips, identifying fields that are kind of populated on the report, conditional styles, highlighting, changing the font, such stuff of that nature. Grouping your data, filtering, so just removing data you don't want to see on your report. Creating prompts, which is it's filtering, but you get prompted every time you run a report to see what data you want to see. And then cascading prompts. I guess I'll explain that as I'm on that slide. It'll probably make a little more sense. It's just prompts with an extra little feature on it that doesn't really take too much time. And then dynamic prompts is just, again, just a very useful tool where you don't have to keep on rerunning reports. It's just really fast for view purposes, just save you a few clicks. Creating calculated fields. So there will be fields that are not in the database that you would need to calculate. So we'll go over that. And then features like joins, unions, intersections, and except. Tabular view, which is once you get a little more involved with writing and you have multiple queries, how to check for performance of your queries. Drill through reports, which I really like. Seeing data at a higher level and then being able to click down on a number, for example, to see the detail level transactions. And then lastly, just if you wanted to schedule reports to kind of send them to you on a daily, weekly, monthly basis without you having to log into Cognos. Okay. So with the user-specific tricks, just some things. Like I said, this is for beginners. You may know this already, but you can, or by default, I believe the number of entries that users see is set to 15 or 20. And then you're required to hit like the next button to see additional entries. So each user can set their own preference. There's a little person icon to the top right in Cognos once you're logged in, where you can set those preferences. So you can change your the number of entries to something more than 20 if you would like. And then there's also this thing called separators in view list. Right. So again, default, you're going to see a list of reports, for example, and the background's just going to be all white. And then if if you look at the icons towards the right, you might kind of mix up, which icons are related to what report. By setting it like an alternating background, it's just going to have like banding, a gray and white banding on your screen, so it's easier for you to look across the screen there. And then the report format, you can set a default format. I think by default, everything is set to HTML. But if you want every time you click a report by default to run, say for an Excel, you can set that up as your preference, and that's all per user. And then obviously, if you set this up, you can change it to individual reports to say, hey, on a particular report, I want to run in PDF or however you like. Some other tricks here, copying reports to folders, really something I do a lot. So say there's a report out there that someone else has created or that needs to be tweaked. You can create a copy, paste that report into your My folders, make sure it's copy and not cut. And then, you can apply individual filters, prompts, whatever it is that you like. Make changes, it allows you to vet the data before publishing them out to other users. And people will not go, while you're actively working in the report without being vetted, someone won't pick it up and run with the data that they see. So really useful to put stuff in your personal My folders that each user should have to avoid those issues. And the last trick is, again, for beginners. Most people will start with Query Studio and then move themselves up to Report Studio. And a nice thing you can do, I don't have screenshots on this, but if you're so used to Query Studio, you can create a report, at least the basic needs in Query Studio. And then in the left pane there's an option to open that report in Report Studio. And most of that, or all the stuff you've entered in Query Studio will translate to Report Studio, and then you can add additional fields or whatever it is you need that Query Studio will not allow. So that's, again, a nice feature. Okay. As far as report writing tips, this is, as you start creating reports for others, requirements. I can't tell you how many times, even though I follow these rules, people will ask for one thing and then they change, what they want. But, if you stress how important it is for what it is they're looking for, the layout of the data, the exact fields, it really helps. And with Costpoint, what I usually like to do is ask the users, hey, what field is it that you're referring to that you want to see in this report? And if you're not sure on the Cognos side exactly where it is, a nice little feature here is you can just go into the particular screen in Costpoint and click on the help menu or the help button there. And then there's an additional help. And then if you scroll all the way down in the help, there's usually for most screens, there's a link that says table information. And then it'll actually tell you what table holds the information that's in the screen in Costpoint. And then when you go back into Cognos, if you hover on the actual data items, it'll actually tell you what field or what table and field name that particular data item is referencing. So really nice to use. All right, next we're going to identify fields on a report. So this is very useful when you say you've created a report and then you come back maybe a day later, 2 days later, and you're not sure exactly where you've pulled that data from. There are many ways to do a lot of things in Cognos. So I'm just going to kind of show you two ways that I usually use to identify where I pulled this data from. So one way is if you are on, on the report, on the list, on the page view there, you can see in the bottom left in the properties pane or section, you'll see where it says expression, and then it's going to tell you that, hey, you got this information from the project basic information .projects customer ID, and that's where the data is sitting. So when you want to go and grab additional fields or something, to look in that general area. The other way is if you just double click, in this example, the customer ID. This is not the same screenshot, but if you were to double click, then you would see, it would just pull up the query item, and it would just show you the same information, and then you can just close out once you find where the data is coming from. Okay, now we'll be discussing conditional styles. If you're an Excel user, you'll know exactly what it is I'm referring to. Just setting up different formats for if a criteria is met. So again, as I've mentioned, just custom formatting based on meeting certain criteria. So you can set this up by right-clicking on the field that you want to format, or again in the properties section on the bottom left side, you can just click on the ellipses there, and it'll take you into the same screen. So those are the two ways of doing it. And there's additional, I'm just showing you two. You could actually go into the toolbar and also do it that way. So once you go ahead and click on that, you will be prompted with this screen here. And then all you want to really do is click on the, select new conditional style, and then select what field the style should be based on. So in this case, we're going to do it based on the amount field. Okay. So what I'm going to do in this particular example is just highlight or italicize the record based on a dollar or a number value. So you'll want to click on the new value icon, which is it's circled on the screen there. And then you just enter a dollar value. And then you can pretty much, there's pre-selected styles that you can choose, so you could do that. Or you can do a custom style and click on the edit icon and create whatever style it is you'd want. I usually go with the custom rather than a predefined style, but you can select as you wish. And then you'll pretty much get a sampling of what the formatting will look like. So if you look at the right section there, you'll see one is highlighted in red, one is in green font, and then there's a black with it's bolded and italicized. And that's in this screen here where we would set all that up. And then when I run the report, again, based on the values that I've set in the conditional styles area, it's just going to go ahead and format the data accordingly. Now I'll be discussing groups within Cognos. It's a good tool to have. You just want to make sure it becomes useful to you. A lot of people would like to export their data from Cognos into Excel and then manipulate that data in Excel. So grouping may not help you. But if you're just looking at the data just in Cognos or dumping it out to like a PDF or saving it as a PDF, this is very useful. So pretty much it just allows you to group data So whatever data item that you want. And then you can easily do subtotals based on the group fields. And the way to do that is you would just go ahead and select a field, and then you've seen that I've circled that grouping icon there. You would just go ahead and click on that, and it would go group the field, the data item. And you'll see that once you group the item, as you see on this screen here, that icon appears in Cognos. So it just lets you know that, hey, you have grouped this field. So as you can see, the left side, I have data that's ungrouped. On the right side, I have data that is grouped. And you can see that I was able to create subtotals, not only in this example, not only on the periods, but then also subtotals for the year. You're not necessarily required to subtotal on every grouping. It's up to you and your needs, but that functionality is there. Next, we're just going to talk about filters. So filters, you're pretty much telling Cognos, I don't want to see data, or I only want to see data that I'm filtering on. And it can be a summarized or a detail level. So what does that mean? So say that you have a dollar value that is per transaction at the transactional level. So you can just say, hey, I only want to see each transaction that's above a certain dollar amount, for example. Or, hey, if it's rolled up, I only want to see anything after it's been summarized if it meets a certain threshold. One thing, and then obviously I reference back to Excel a lot. A lot of people like to, work with Excel. It is, but it's not like an Excel filter where the data is there and you're not seeing it. In this case, you're not seeing it, or the data is not even there. You're just saying, I don't care to see data that that I'm excluding. So the way to apply your filters, you can just select a field on your page view, and then go ahead and click on Data, Filter, and then Edit Filters. Or on the toolbar, you have the Edit Filter that you can click. So I've shown you both on the screen here. There are other ways. Again, I would just get comfortable with this, and then as you get more comfortable with Cognos, they're really easy to find. Okay, so once you go ahead and click on the Add Filter, you're pretty much going to be prompted for, how do you want to apply this filter? So then your options are custom based on a data item. And then you can just say, all right, well, I just want to say, hey, a fiscal year is equal to X. That's what I want to see. Combined, so you can have very generic logic. Hey, if it's equal to fiscal year 2015 and the period is equal to 3. Or you can do advanced, or you can just say fiscal year is equal to 2015, period is equal to 3. And then you can say not account equal to whatever. You can pretty much write a stretched out logic to be applied on your filter. So you'll see these two circles that you're seeing on the screen when you click on New, and this is where you'll go ahead and select that. Okay. So once you get to the next screen, You can select here if you want to show the values that you're filtering on or not show the values that you're filtering on. So I'm just going to say, hey, I want to show the values that I'm selecting. And then this is a really nice tool. We're actually going to talk about this in the next few slides as well. But if you check this box, every time you run the report, Cognos will prompt you to say, hey, what year or whatever value we're filtering do you want to see this data for? Really nice, so you get more of a dynamic report rather than a static report. Okay, this is where you're just going to select the values. Again, this is for the initial run, but if you were to have checked that box to say prompt, every time you run the report, obviously it's going to prompt you. And then the bottom field there, the checkbox, include missing values. So you can say how you want to handle null or missing values. So say, for example, you want to see in the screenshot here, 2012, but also if there was no year in that particular field, you can say, so I want to see 2012 and missing values. Or if you keep it unchecked, then it's only going to show you 2012 data. So now we're going to discuss prompts. We've kind of gone over it with the previous screen, which is really easy to do with the GUI. You just select the box and it creates a prompt for you. This way that I'm going to show you next is going to be more, creating the prompt yourself rather than just checking the box. So what are prompts used for? You use the same report just for different criteria, like I had mentioned before. You want to see, at one point you may want to see for period 3, the next month you run it, maybe you want to see for period 4. You have the ability to do that on your report. Again, multiple ways of doing this. I'm not going to go through every way, but I'm just wanting to highlight the 3 ways here on the screen. So the screenshot you see down here is actually the Query Explorer within Cognos. So it's that middle section there between, I don't even know what I want to call it, right after the left pane. How about that? There's this middle section. So in your Query Explorer, you can go ahead and drag a data item and just throw it into the detail filters area. And then I'll show you the next screen here. Pretty much write out your logic to say, hey, customer name is equal to, and then you put it in the question marks. And then when you run the prompt page, it's going to automatically prompt you for the field that you put in the question marks. Creating cascading prompts. What this is, it's really easy, first of all. It may look complex. You can, a good example is if you have, say, for example, you're filtering on a year, and then you have another filter for a period. So let's take a year 2015, for example. Say you select year 2015, well, you probably don't have data in Costpoint or your database past period 3. So what the cascading prompt does is once you select 2015, it says, all right, well, I only see period 1, 2, and 3 in the database. So I'm not going to, that second or that cascading prompt, I'm only going to show you periods 1, 2, and 3. I'm not going to show you periods 4 through 12 because they're not even in the database for period 2015. And that's essentially what a cascading prompt is. So you're just limiting the second prompt options or the options you can select in the second prompt based on what you select in the first prompt. So these are just the steps on creating it. So after you pretty much created the first prompt, you create a second prompt. And then you want to make sure that both fields or values are in the same tree. So you'll notice period number is kind of highlighted there in black. The year would be selected in the same from the same tree. So you want to make sure you do that for this to work correctly. And then after you select the correct field, down on the right screen here, or on the right field here, you'll see there's a cascading source. And you just want to say, hey, and in this example, parameter 1 was the year. You just want to say once the year is selected, and that's what it's referencing to, display the values for the period. So this is just kind of giving you an idea of what it's doing. When I select 2014, it's showing me only values of 1 through 19. And then this is an old database, not maybe the best, or a new database, I should say, not the best example. But if you look at the 2013 data, it's 16 to 24, it's giving you everything. This particular database started in period 16, so you're seeing everything. Whereas for 2014, even though, so since we weren't at the end of the year, it's only showing periods 1 through 19. It's not showing you the 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, because there is no data in the database for those periods. Okay. Now, dynamic prompts, very simple. You may not have a need for this. Maybe you do. This is something that, you know, and essentially you can view the output of the data without really rerunning the report. Doesn't work well if you're wanting to export. This is more of a view. And you're able to run the report on a fly. There's no prompt page necessarily that you're going through to view your data. So pretty much you just want to create a report with filters, and then you want to make the filter optional. And the way to do that is once you go ahead and select on the filter, there's a properties pane again on the bottom left side, and you would just say, hey, it's set as required as by default. You'll just say it's optional. And then once you do that, you just drag that prompt onto your report page, as you see in this second screenshot. And you'll be prompted through the individual steps from the wizard on creating the parameter. And then you want to, once you do that, there's a auto submit feature which you have to turn on. So you would just go ahead and click on that auto submit. And this is pretty much what it looks like. So on your actual report page, you don't have a separate page for prompts. It's that prompt is right on that page. And as you select, in this example, we have male and female. As you select male, it's going to filter on male right there on that view. Once you select female, it's only going to show you females. Again, you don't have to do the extra 3, 4, 5 clicks. You can just view the data as you select your item. All right, so now calculated fields. As I mentioned when I first started this, it's for items that are, or values that are not in the database. You need to calculate them to derive them. And common examples, a profit is probably not, it's not calculated within Costpoint. and you would just write a formula to say, hey, the revenue minus the cost, and that's my profit. And then you can also do conditional fields, I guess. And then you can say, in this example, I'll just use this example here. If profit is less than $5, in this case $5, then I want to display low profit. Else I want to display high profit. So it's not necessarily numbers that you're required to do. You can have actual strings populated on your report based on meeting a criteria, and that's a calculated field. So in this example, we're just showing you how to do that. Once you have your report view, again, multiple ways of doing it. Here, this is just one. Once you're on the page, the report page, you would just drag the query calculation field, item, and dump it wherever you want. Drag it into your report, and just make sure it resembles what it is on this second field here, or screenshot. You want to have that double or that solid line there, and it's going to tell you that's where it's going. Okay, once you drop the field there, it's going to ask you for a name of the field. That's the header that it's going to give you for the field. And in this case, we're just going to call it expected salary. And then you can put in your calculation that you need, that's required for your need. In this case, we're just going to say, hey, the hourly rate multiplied by 2080, which is the number of hours in a year that an individual may work. And you would just dump that in there. So if you go to the second tab, which is the query data tab, you take the hourly rate field and you just drag it on into the expression definition area. Okay, once you do that, it'll just appear. And then you can just add the multiply times 2080 to derive your calculation, or to do your calculation. Once you put that in there, a really nice feature to use is there's this, and I haven't highlighted it in this slide here, but there's this white arrow around a green box. That's to validate if your definition is correct, and make sure there's no errors in it. So once you do that, it'll validate saying, yep, there's no errors, and you'll see in this example, it says no errors. If there were errors, it would kind of explain to you what's going on, and you can fix it. Something this simple, a calculation this simple, you shouldn't run into any errors, but as you have some logic that's a little more involved, you could possibly have an error. So it's a nice thing to do, to just validate when you enter anything using this feature. And then once you click OK, as you can see down in this bottom screenshot, it's just giving you your expected salary based on our calculation. With Report Studio, you don't actually see the values until you run the report. Just going to tell you where you've placed the item. All right, joins, unions, intersections, and exceptions. This really nice. I use this a lot. As you get more involved with creating reports and you get a feel of creating Report Studio reports, you'll be creating multiple queries, which then derive one report. And these multiple queries will need to be linked somehow. So that's where this comes into play. So we have 4 areas. We have a join. Okay, so pretty much it's just creating a join between two other queries, and then and you usually do joins when there isn't a relationship already created in Framework Manager. So that's just the models that have been created, the packages that have been created in Cognos for you already, and then you'd specify the relationship or the cardinality. By that, let's see. For example, if an employee were to, in Costpoint, they could have multiple salary records. So you can say that one employee can have one to many salary records. So that would be, the relationship going in that direction. And then you have to specify the other relation, which would be one salary record can only be linked to one employee. So that's how you would set up your relationships. I don't have examples here. Otherwise, this slides could go on forever. Again, just wanting to let you know that that functionality is there. And then once you do your join, you can base a third query based on your two joins, and then you can create a report page based on that third query. The way unions works is pretty much you're combining two queries together. Okay, so you're not really joining. So say, for example, you want to see a report of employees and vendors. Well, they don't sit in one table. But what you can do is you can we have one query that has, say, for example, an employee ID and employee name. You'll have another query that has vendor ID and vendor name. And then the third query would join these two together, and it would list the combination of employees and vendors. A few things to take away from that is the data items need to be in the same order in both the queries. So for example, if you have employee ID and employee name, then you want in one query, then you want to have query ID, vendor ID and vendor name in the other query. And they need to have the same type. So if one's a string, the other has to be a string in the other query as well. The other thing is both the queries need to have the same number of data items. So you can't have one query, say, employee ID, employee name, and birth date, and then the vendor query only have vendor ID and vendor name. They have to have the same number of data items. So once those requirements are met, you can do a union between them, and you'd have a third query that now has information for both employees and vendors. The intersect feature, again, you have two queries. Oh, sorry, one thing I forgot about the union is you can do unions for more than just two queries. So I keep saying two queries, but you can union 5 different queries into one. When you create unions in Cognos, it only show you 2 fields, and people think, okay, you can only do 2 queries, but you can actually do multiple queries. So just keep that in mind. The intersect feature, as it says here on the slide, if you have 2 queries, I'm just going to go with the example of the vendor and the employee, and say you have the same employee ID and vendor ID and the same name. You're finding where there's a match between both queries, and it's only going to display that data. And then with the except, it's kind of the reverse. You have, let's say, A, B, and C in query 1, and you have A and C in query 2. Well, it's only going to show you B because it's not in query 2, and B is in query 1, if that makes sense. So essentially, it's returning rows that are in query 1, but that are not in query 2. Again, I'm not showing any examples of this. Just want to let you know that this functionality is there. You feel free to reach out to us if you have a need for something of this. Tabular data view. Again, as you get a little more involved and create reports that have a lot of queries, this comes into use a lot. You'll find, sometimes that your queries are taking a little longer to run, or there's an error, but you don't know if it's query 1 or query 2 or query 3 that is causing the problem. So what this allows you to do is you can run each query individually just to see how long it's taking, if the report is erroring, or that query itself is erroring out, and you can pinpoint where the problem is, and you don't have to look at the whole report as a whole. You're looking at individual queries. And then the way to do that, again, there's multiple ways. Like everything else, you would just go to the query, into the toolbar. Once you're in the query, you'd go into the toolbar, and there is this thing that says view tabular data. So run view tabular data, or again, I have a really hard time explaining what this middle field is here. But there's, after that left pane, there's this thing field, and then you can expand the Query Explorer, and you can say view tabular data from there. And it's only going to run the data for that one query that you select, to pinpoint any issues or processing times. Drill through reports. Really nice. Use this a lot. Doesn't take too much time, and people that see it are just amazed and they love it. Essentially what it is you have a report, say at a higher level, it's rolled up data. And then once you see that data, maybe you want to drill down into a lower level to see more line level transactions, for example. That's what drill through allows. So pretty much one report, like I said, is a summary. The second report is your detail. And the way the naming goes, or that I use at least, is your main report, or your summary report is your source, and then your target is your detail. So what you want to do is you always start by creating your detail query first. So this is really two different reports. So you start by creating your detail report first of what you want your detail transactions to be. So if you look at this screenshot I have on the bottom that says target, I want to see fiscal year, period, employee ID, the number of hours they've charged, and the dollar amount. And then you want to set filters. These filters are then going to be also used from the source report that we're going to create next, the summary level. So you want to make sure you have the right or the appropriate filters. So in this case, I'm going to say for year, I want to filter on year, and I want to filter on period. All right. Once I've done that, I save that report. I want to now create my summary report, the data that's now rolled up, which is the source report, as I had mentioned earlier. And this source report, it's a crosstab that has been created with years going across, periods going down. Once I've done that, you want to go to the properties pane on the left side, left bottom there. And once you click on the ancestor button, you want to click on the crosstab fact cells, as I've circled on the screen there. Once you do that, you want to click on the drill through definitions icon, which is on the top right usually of your screen when you're in the toolbar there, to set up the rules for the drill through. So when you do that, you're going to see this screen here. You're going to click, as it says on the new drill through definition. You are going to find now your target report that we created, the first report that was created. You just run the report, or select run the report as the option for your action. And then I like to say open in new window. You don't necessarily have to check this box, but if you want to run the report multiple times, drill down on multiple values, you can just close out of the window and then it'll take you back to the initial window. So I would recommend to keep this box checked. And then we're going to identify our parameters, how they're being mapped from the source report to the target report. So you want to click on that pencil there. When you do, you're going to see this screen similar to here. And what we're saying is, okay, so the detailed report, we set up the filters for fiscal year and period, and we're going to pass the data from the source report, which is also fiscal year and period, that intersection. So whatever we clicked on in the intersection in our source report, we want to pass the fiscal year and period onto our target report. And once you set that up, it just knows how that's working, essentially. Okay, so end result, you run your source report. Now that it's a drill through report, you'll see that the dollar values are links, or the intersections are links. So you can click on an intersection. And then when you click on the intersection, it knows that period 12 or year 2012, period 1, for example, that's what I'm passing to my target or the lower level report, the detailed report. And you'll see that now the values match from what's in the source and the target, but the target report actually has more detailed data, whereas the source report is just, it's rolled up. Okay, and lastly, scheduling reports. Functionality in here where, say you're running a report on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and you just set it up as a schedule, essentially. There's this icon, as you can see, I've highlighted on the screen here, that you would select. And then you can set your frequency of how often you want it run. Now, if it is prompted reports, you need to make sure you have default values that are being passed. Otherwise, if it's just a static report, then without any prompts, then it shouldn't be a problem. So once you do that, you're going to go ahead and select your format or your delivery. Hey, I want it in Excel, for example, obviously, if you're going to email it to yourself. So you just go ahead and select that. And then on the right side, you'll see towards the middle on the right, it says send link. And then if you do edit options, there is actually going to give you an option to say send an email or an attachment, and it'll just email it to you. So it'll either send you a link to the report, or it'll also send you an attachment if that's something you would prefer. Okay, that is the end of my webinar here. Just some information, or this is my contact information actually. You can email me directly or just visit our website at www.criforresults.com. If you did get, come a little late into this session, we will be saving out all of our webinars on our YouTube channel. So if you just search for CRI for Results in YouTube, you'll see all our webinars. Hopefully you found this informative, and hopefully we see you on future webinars. Thank you.